From time immemorial, the world has been sold to different ideologies that have shaped corporate response, determined economic policies of nations, influenced governments, social responsibilities, and orchestrated the enforcement of a wide range of environmental policies. One of such ideologies that has persistently outstayed its relevance in our world is the subject of global warming, or as more recently referred to, climate change.
Our story starts in 1896 in Sweden with this guy, Svante Arrhenius, a chemist. Arrhenius is the first person to figure out that putting CO2 into the atmosphere could make the Earth warmer. The phrase global warming makes its first appearance in a 1975 research paper. Temperatures keep rising throughout the 80s, and 1988 is the hottest year ever recorded to that point. This gets people's attention, and global warming starts to enter mainstream public awareness for the first time.
They used to call it global warming. When they found out that wasn't getting the traction, because places they said would get warmed up started getting cold, so they used a more generic one, climate change. So whether it goes cold or but they said everything was going to get hotter and hotter. Some places got colder and colder. So they said, all right, climate change, whatever change, there's going to be a change.
They just keep being proven wrong. Now, when I was a kid, I was told it was global warming. Hide under your desk, kids. The polar bears are going to drown because there's global warming. But they stopped using that language around 2011 because accidentally the Earth started to cool and disproved their narrative.
I read the original UN study years ago, and I was just curious as to how they were going to deal with the question that the temperatures went up first, and then there was the increase in carbon dioxide, right? Because you can't say that A causes B if B happened first. And so I read this, and I could see they were tiptoeing through the tulips and the way they phrased things and so forth. They couldn't confront that. And now we're finding out that they knew darn well they couldn't deal with all the evidence.
One of the gimmicks of the perpetrators of the climate change narrative is citing scientific validations to prove the legitimacy of this climate prophecy. This has ensured it remained in the public domain. However, the scientific validations have proven to be void of credence, especially when subjected to global best practices in science as we know it.
Everywhere you go, they're talking climate change. It's a hoax. Listen, and listen hard. Human beings take in oxygen and emit carbon dioxide. Plants produce oxygen and they use carbon dioxide. Now, it's easy for us to know that we do emit carbon dioxide. All right? You have to study some more to realize that plants actually give up oxygen and use carbon dioxide. You can't just know, because you know you breathe. You inhale oxygen. You exhale carbon dioxide. But you don't see plants. You don't see that happening with plants. You don't know. You don't know by looking. There had to be some further study to come to that conclusion. So it would have been easy for us to say, now, if we increase in the world, we're gonna consume all the oxygen. We're gonna consume it. And I dare say, all the oxygen in the world is not given by plants only. But you know, they think that God was a fool for saying, go into the world and multiply. God, he didn't know he needed more oxygen. So the hoax is about carbon emission.
It has become common to refer to the emissions from burning fossil fuels for energy as carbon emissions. That is entirely misleading. Carbon dioxide is not carbon. Carbon dioxide is a colorless, odorless, tasteless gas which is an indispensable food for all living things. Can you have too much of it? In theory, yes. That's what climate alarmists say is happening now. CO2 levels are getting too high. Are they right? Well, if we look at the big picture, we find something surprising. For most of the history of life on Earth, carbon dioxide has been present in the atmosphere at much higher levels than it is today.
A lot of those who are championing the cause don't even know they don't even understand it. They don't even know what it's about. And they've lied to a lot of young people who are thinking, they've put the fear in them and telling those young people that their future is bleak. And except something is done right now, they're not going to have a future.
Where we need to start is in the education system, because my mind was polluted about climate change, or about global warming rather, because they sat us down in health class and they made us watch Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore. That was a lie. It never came into fruition, and they keep focusing on these young generations to sell them fear for their own power.
While students are being programmed in the classrooms to see the future of the world in the light of an imploding climate change, the postulates of this weather facade are pushing their narrative into the subconscious of different categories of the public through captivating mass media instruments such as movies, public motivational talk shows, and television and radio programs.
It's a hoax. And they have created several films. You know, they've come up with so many things to try to convince people about climate change. They gather all these politicians and business leaders, get them in a room and show them videos, you know, and those people sit down there and they say, it's real, it's real, it's real. So they say we have to protect the environment.
Temperature is changing, climate is changing, man plays some role. There's not much disagreement with predictions of disaster that are not connected clearly to warming or to our activities or to anything else, and leaving people with the thought that if the first part is true, the second part must be true. That is certainly not the case. And then to add insult to injury, to propose policies that would have nothing to do with any of it, but involve trillions of dollars and harm to many people, is, I think, crossing the line.
The notion that there is a massive depletion of the ozone layer resulting from carbon emission has been a hoax since it was brought to public domain. While the proponents have strategically justified their claims with scientific standards, albeit pseudoscience, the Bible is being fulfilled in our day, and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive. Matthew chapter 24, verse 24. The postulates of climate change must become aware that they have no monopoly on the knowledge of science.
Oh, there's so much carbon emission. Yes, but you don't have a monopoly on science to be able to tell us that there will be no balance. And I'm warning, this is not about carbon emission. It's about trying to have a monopoly on science for another super control.
The issue of global warming has been politicized. I think that there are a substantial number of scientists who have manipulated data so that they will have dollars rolling into their projects, and I think we're seeing it almost weekly or even daily. Scientists who are coming forward and questioning the original idea that man-made global warming is what is causing the climate to change. Yes, our climate's changed. They've been changing for ever since the Earth was formed. But I do not buy into that a group of scientists who have, in some cases, found to be manipulating this information.
You know, we partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. You know, we own the science, and we think that the world, you know, should know it.
Very offensive, very annoying. When a group of people believe that they have a monopoly on science and to decide that the level of their knowledge is the limit of knowledge. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. They cannot be the limits of knowledge. Before they came, there were others who had a certain level of knowledge. And we have all exceeded the past. But we must also exceed the present.
There is no consensus in science. Science isn't a vote. Science is about facts. And if you get down to the hard, cold facts, there's no question about it. Climate change is not happening. There is no significant man-made global warming now. There hasn't been any in the past, and there's no reason to expect any in the future. There's a whole lot of baloney, and yes, it has become a big political point of the Democratic Party and part of their platform, and I regret it's become political instead of scientific.
You know, when you hear, for instance, a scientist saying the science is settled, you know that person has stepped out of the science. So, you know, I think that registers with ordinary people. And whenever you see someone say, you know, instead of answering arguments, how could so many people agree if it weren't true? This should be a red flag.
With the abundant information, validating the climate change mantra is a hoax. It has become apparent that the continued media coverage it has gotten so far is due to the sinister objectives of its perpetrators, and in the wake of it, they have consistently sabotaged dissenting voices, just as this woman narrates her ordeal.
The group of esteemed scientists were strategizing to squash their opponents. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, why should I believe this instead of my own judgment? What scientists actually agree on is a very narrow slice of things. Yes, temperatures have been increasing overall for the last several hundred years.
No doubt.
And that carbon dioxide does act to warm the planet. But there's no agreement as to whether warming is dangerous or not.
For saying that, you were one of the targets of the congressman saying, show us where you get your money.
Yeah. I was one of the 7.
7 climate skeptics were branded heretics in order to reveal all their sources of funds. Curry abandoned science.
This is after praising me and pushing me a few years ago as, you know, the prestigious
Well,
scientist.
you have wrong
and whatever.
opinions now.
Yeah. I was trying to be honest as a scientist. It was very unpopular with a lot of my colleagues. They were trying to squash people who disagreed with them.
And they've succeeded.
I get emails from people all the time who wish they could speak out.
What are they worried about?
Losing their jobs?
It's dangerous to dissent when climate change is something politicians address with religious zeal.
It's sad that that is what has happened with many countries. And the World Economic Forum needs other competitors. You don't have to be in the WEF. You don't have to be. And I'm calling for alternatives to the WEF. There has to be alternatives to the WEF because they're building something that is not right.
The World Economic Forum, your governments, all of them. Most of the elites, the 1%, the parasites, the privileged, own something called a Sunseeker super yacht. It's a beautiful boat. It's 40 meters long. The Sunseeker super yacht burns 9 tons of diesel a day. You wouldn't use 9 tons of diesel in your little zip around town car in a year. But these super yachts, these Sunseeker super yachts, are exempt from any carbon taxation or any ramifications of burning 9 tons of diesel a day. Does that not suggest that they are not remotely concerned about diesel or climate change?
All those plans, we are putting them on hold. You see, till we are done and we check out of here. Till we are done. When the rapture takes place, They can do what they like. In fact, they're going to do what they like. See, but until then, the name of the Lord Jesus is the biggest name. See, it's the biggest name. That's the greatest authority. The good thing is, we know how to use it.
At the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow in submission of those who are in heaven and on earth and under the earth.